Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting of February 5th, 2024. Our meeting number 17 of fiscal year 24. I have to read this announcement first. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location stated in the agenda, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed via the link in the agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their help. So we're going to jump right in, and our guest tonight is Fred Leonardo, the Community Development Director, and the topic is the Economic Development Committee and the grant program, because there's an article on the warrant for that.
Yes, thank you for having me tonight again. My name is Fred Leonardo, Community Development Director. I'm here tonight to talk about the EDC grant program. Just as a brief history, because I think there's some new members.
We got a lot of new ones.
You had a lot of new members.
At least 2 or 3.
Okay, so I'll go through a brief history if I may.
Yep.
The program started approximately 5 years ago. It was first instituted with $25,000. The funds came directly from billboards, electronic billboards. Originally, accounting-wise, the funds would go directly into EDC's account. It then increased through town meeting. We went ahead a couple years after that, went to $40,000, and more recently, we've increased that through town meeting, $60,000. Accounting-wise, last spring annual meeting, we found that the accounting was a little bit askew, so we changed the way that it's actually accounted. So now we have a recurring warrant that the $60,000 has to be appropriated every year through town meeting. So that's how we've gotten to where we are now. Albeit it's not directly tax dollars, obviously that money could be used in other purposes, but through the years, that's how the money's been appropriated through the billboards. And it's gone up to the $60,000. That's what we take in annually for billboards. That's kind of the background to why we are where we are today. If there's any questions as I go, please don't hesitate to stop me. Since the inception of the grant, 49 grants have been issued, and of those 49 companies, 48 are still in business. At least in the town of Westborough, I should classify that, because some of them may have moved out, or one of them may have. So part of the thought behind the grant was to create that synergy between the Economic Development Committee and the new and or existing business in town. So we've kind of gone through stops and starts with this program too, and it's been refined over the years, and I'll get into that in a second. It's not on the slide, but so it's really to equate Westborough, to welcome businesses into Westborough and retain those businesses in Westborough once they do get here. So when the grant program was first instituted through the EDC, it was kind of a catch as you can. It wasn't really scientific on our end. In the last 2 or 3 years, that's gotten much more scientific. And the reason I say that, because on the Economic Development Committee's end, through the help of our economic coordinator, they've come up with a matrix. So when businesses now apply for the grant, they actually are scored on a scoring rubrics. So now when the applicant comes, we can see, it gives some indication to the committee why they should grant this particular grant up to $5,000 to a particular business. And it's on that scoring rubrics that they rely on. So that wasn't in place up until a couple years ago. And we've refined it as we've started to use that. So that's really part of how we try to take that grant program and expand that onto the community and the small businesses. So that's some of the explanation to why we think it's an important program. Having said that, last year we were able to award 4 $5,000 grants. this year, matter of fact, tomorrow morning, we're hearing 4 additional grants at $5,000 request for each. So the timing's been a little weird too because of the way we did the accounting. Last year, we weren't able to actually start grants until March, so it kind of threw off some of that. And we had a vacancy in the economic development coordinator's position for a while, so sometimes that slows down the application for grants. But we've had as many as 10 in one quarter and as few as 1. But this coming quarter, we have 4. So let's give you an indication of the ones that we have coming. What we were tasked to do last year through the Finance Committee was to look for a return on investment. We find that our previous coordinator started to look at that a little bit. Our new coordinator's just gotten in the position the last couple of months, so it's something we'll continue to do. But with dealing with a small business, it's oftentimes difficult to ask that business to actually give us dollars and cents to, if we give you $5,000, can you give us how much that equates in a return? So we've done that through testimony a little bit. You'll see 4 different testimonies in front of you here. I won't read them because that's, I assume, well, I shouldn't assume anything, but I won't bother reading to you. But I will point out on the last one specifically, when Mark Zeff, our economic development coordinator, reached out to that company, it's Coffee and Pie. They're on 276 Turnpike. They actually took over what was previously Parcel and Perk, which had a different business philosophy. So Coffee and Pie is more a traditional type coffee setting. The pie obviously is a takeoff. Well, maybe not obvious. It's a scientific term here. So one of the things they did do, and they said that it did equate to a 300% return, was that they got a refrigerator that was able to display the desserts. Previously, they just did it on paper through a menu. So they said that they were able to use the grant program to buy that refrigerator for the display, and it did equate to a significant increase in their output. So I do point to that we'll try to capture more of that for the committee to actually get dollars and cents, but that will be a very difficult thing. Oftentimes, as much as it pains me to say it, that the economic development coordinator has to go to the business and actually help them fill out the application, even though it's not a very complicated one. But it's for a struggling new business, especially if it's a 1 or 2 person outfit, even the paperwork can be tedious for them at times. So that's kind of where we're at. These are a couple of logos or various logos of the companies that the Economic Development Committee's been able to help in the last few years. And that's my presentation. I open it to any questions.
Yep. Just first, if it'd be possible for you to send the slides by email to me, I can give them to our secretary so she can include it for the record.
Absolutely.
Andrew, question?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Fred. Last year when we did talk about a return on investment, I think we all appreciated the difficulty of allocating specific amounts. But I think that there's still some creative opportunities to look at. So for example, not only if you look at the companies that you didn't approve, for example, how many of those are still in town? Because if people are applying and they're not getting the loan and they're still staying in town, is the loan really helping? Questions like what has been the net change in business, like positive, negative. So how many businesses total do we have, for example? How many are even filling out the forms? Those are metrics that might not be specific return on investment, but are tremendous barometers of how we are reaching the community, the business community, and how they're responding to it. So not a question so much as like some creative ways of thinking about ways you can present return on value.
Sure.
And I think the 49 businesses, that is, I think we may have heard a number like that last year. It's good to hear about it. But that's exactly on point for an indicator of how this is moving the needle. So just a thought. Thank you.
Sure. Well, and one other thing I will say, if I may, is that one of the things we haven't talked to the committee, that one of the local rapid recovery programs was to do a women and minorities outreach report. So we're just getting that report back. We've seen a draft that we haven't gotten the final. One of the suggestions they had is through the matrix is to create a minimum score. So that's something we can report on too, that oftentimes we may get companies, the scoring rubrics is 105 points. And a lot of the times the companies come in at about 50, 55, 60. This last quarter, we actually went through the scores for presentation tomorrow. They were up in the 80 and 90 range. So we can certainly give you some kind of breakdown if we do have a minimum score, how many actually score under the minimum, don't even qualify for the grant program. We can certainly tally some of those up for next meeting if you'd like.
And knowing if they stay in town, I think that's one of the
Sure.
key barometers that you used. If they're staying in town, then this has value to it.
Right.
And if they're not getting the loans and they're leaving town, that might be an indication. Might
Sure.
just something to look at.
And we
Thank
can
you.
certainly do that.
Prashant?
I just wanted to add to Andrew's point that I think what you do is very, very important, critical for us, because we rely a lot on what I saw so far, and I'm pretty new, so correct me if I'm wrong somewhere. We rely a lot compared to other towns that I've seen on the property taxes versus the other forms of taxes. I think our reliance on property taxes is quite a lot, 80% or 78%, close to that. So building business, having the business is really important, because sustaining business is key for us to get more money out of other places as well. So what you do is really important. I just wanted to highlight that.
Good.
I guess Andrew has already told about it, but then I just want to add that how often do you relook at the rubrics, has it been helping people? Has it been, yes, testimonials and the matrix that you got, the last one, 300% is great, but how often have you, like in the last couple of years or few years, looked at the rubrics and said it's working, it's not working, and maybe that adds to the point, do we need to refine it further?
Well, yes, we do look at it, at least quarterly, if not several times during the year. And having said that, one of the changes we made is we actually have two different scoring rubrics. One of it was for downtown business, the other one's for outside that. We've changed the rubric, and I should know this off the top of my head, and I apologize for not being able to quote it exactly, but we've been able to finesse and change the categories in the rubrics too, depending on how they've come in, whether they make sense. So a lot of the scoring is, one of them was for a startup, one of them was for existing building, existing business, sorry. So we have changed it. We've actually created two rubrics depending on how you fit into the rubrics.
Sure.
And one of them scores heavily for a downtown business that's been established for many years in town. So the rubrics has changed over the last couple of years since we've implemented. So we I don't want to say continuously, but almost continuously look at it to see if it needs to change and to benefit, businesses, and if it makes more sense to recategorize things.
Yep. And I guess, thank you for that. And in the end, I would just say that if we can get more of the matrix like the bottom one, I think, yes, testimonials are absolutely great to have. They encourage you that somebody's getting a benefit, but I think having more of the matrix probably will also be helpful as we move forward. Yeah.
Sure.
I think part of the point too was how many, in the beginning, the first couple of years, I recall, there were many more people than grant money, and it's one of the, or some number more, and so that's one of the reasons the number went up. Is that still the case, or it's about right now, or the 60K seems about right?
Well,
12 grants.
It's closer, but so the big advantage we have with the rubrics now, or at least the committee has, I should say me, but specifically the committee, and this is one of the reasons why they wanted to have this, is that, well, the first year it was done hastily, so there was like one applicant. Then the second year it got much more used, but we also hit COVID.
Right.
We didn't have an economic development coordinator for a period of time, so it wasn't used for a while. Then for 2 years, it actually went crazy. As I said, one quarter we had 10 applicants, so they couldn't be funded. Prior to the actual recreating of the rubric, the committee oftentimes would split the funds over too many applicants, if you will. So instead of granting, say, $5,000, they were granting $1,000 or $2,000. So the impact was far less when they got to that point. So the advantage they do have now with the rubrics, and they have used it, if that the numbers have been much closer, and this quarter should be okay because they still have funds. But if they can't, if it's not justified and they can't grant and split up the money appropriately, now they can just say, unfortunately, we'd like to fund everything, but we can't. So it'd be more meaningful to give 3 companies $5,000 rather than 6 companies $250,000, or $2,500.
50K would be good.
Yeah, 25,000 would be great, but.
Yeah.
So the rubrics has been a great tool, so the committee can then say and justify why they give money to the particular business. So instead of spreading the funds too thinly, as Walter had pointed out, there's more of an impact if you can fully fund what the company is asking for.
So Rod, you're an ex-EDC member. Have any further comments?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, and I think Fred just touched on it, is, what's the appropriate amount that can make an impact? And I even wonder whether 5,000 is not enough. Maybe we need to have less people we give it to, but at a higher amount for, and I was just, in my mind, what I was thinking about right now was if each quarter you had one 10,000 and one 5,000, you could do that 4 times, and that would be your $60,000. But I know we do struggle with, you have a refrigeration case that costs $20,000 and you're buying you're buying a quarter of a case, you know what I mean? So
True.
I guess that would be my only comment, is maybe less awards and trying to make a bigger impact on the ones that you do have.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say, we did have the opportunity, at least in a couple of cases, where the Coop was one and Wayback Burger was another. They were able to couple the EDC grant with a state program. So in those cases, they actually did award. I think one was $7,500 and one was $10,000. So there is a caveat in the EDC and the grant award itself. If there's a matching fund out there, they can award up to $10,000. So that was able to be done a couple. I mean, it's not all that often that they can do that, but those were 2 cases over the last few years they were able to actually exceed the 5,000. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. I'm sorry, you had a question, too.
Let me first check in with the guys who are remote, since they haven't asked anything yet. Tom or Jean or Beth have anything? If not, then,
No questions.
okay.
I was just going to jump in on, I think, kind of Andrew's point when he was talking about the return on investment. And as Fred said, it's sometimes hard to dig down onto the ROI for the individual, for the individual grants and companies. But, if you focus more on the return for the town and really think of it that way, I think you can help build a better case for the program as a whole. That's all.
Sure.
Josh, anything? Okay. And
Yeah, and I think building off of that is the thought that I had is there's a cautionary note here to be said as well, which is the order of operations is we have businesses in the community that need help to stay here. Therefore, we offer opportunities, and then we have to match them. I say it that way because if we put too much paperwork, and I don't know what the rubric means in terms of time spent, but if we put too much paperwork and effort between that first batch, which is the towns that need help, and the way we get it to them, there's a danger that fewer people will apply because there's too much work, too much effort. And I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm only saying you should be really careful, because the way we know that 60,000 is the right number is because we're hitting just about the sweet spot of what we need, and it's showing the results. Why are we not doing 200,000? It's because there isn't that extra ton of people who are asking for it that we could justify. Why aren't we doing 20,000? It's because we think we have got enough. But I think that's all dependent on making sure that the pathway between companies that need it and us being able to respond to that, and in some cases being able to support them, has to be as frictionless as possible. So again, not a question, just something to be careful about as you're putting this together.
Sure.
So you don't drive people away, and so you get a good sense of what the market need is that we can address with this program.
Great.
So food for thought.
Yeah, point taken.
so does anybody have any reason they can't vote on this? They have enough information now? You're all set? That's what I'm asking while Fred's still here, because
That'd be great.
I don't want you to have him come back and say, oh yeah, Fred, here's 4 more questions next Thursday. Okay. I don't hear any other questions, so I think,
I actually have a
oh, go
non
ahead. Wally's here.
So remind me on, in your budget this year, sorry to put you on the spot, contractual services, what is that for? And then there's an additional 10,000, I may know the answer, just forgotten. There's additional $10,000 for program improvement requests?
Yeah, so the contractual services predominantly for conservation, and it's predominantly for trail maintenance or field
Oh,
maintenance.
that's the one, okay.
Right, so
Okay.
we're trying to, because we keep acquiring more properties
Okay.
through conservation.
Okay.
That was specifically for that.
Okay.
We have used it last year, and actually, we got a reduction of $3,900. We actually used $3,900 of it this fiscal year '24 for implementation of some Permit Pro programs. But that was a one-time deal that we have now implemented, so that was actually a decrease overall in that particular line item.
So the total for this year for conservation-type maintenance is 25,000? If you add
No.
the 15 to the 10?
If we were, yes, that's what we're requesting,
Right,
yes.
yeah.
But last year it previously had been 15,000, then fiscal year '24, it was actually 18,900, but 3,900 of it was specifically for another reason.
Okay.
And that was the reason, was to pay for additional programming.
Okay.
But traditionally, it's been 15,000 for the last 2 or 3 fiscal years, if not longer.
Okay.
So hopefully that answered your question without
Yep.
going too far astray,
No,
my
that was good.
answer.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Thank you very much. And you
will,
want to take a vote?
Yeah, we will.
Sorry.
This takes a little bit. Gene,
didn't wanna
are you
miss
still
that.
able to do a motion? It's Article 10F currently.
It might change.
It will, likely. I mean, they often do. It's only version 2 of the warrant. But, yeah, so we do the motion not on the number, but on the small business grant. I think it's 60,000 from free cash.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find it. McMahon, I move that the Finance Committee recommend to the town to vote to transfer $60,000 from free cash for the small business grant program.
Do we have a second?
Bradley, second?
Okay, let me just catch up and find my papers, because we gotta do roll call, because we're remote, or we're hybrid. Okay, McMahon and Bradley, okay. Today is the 5th. All right, Prashant,
Ahuja, yes.
Pat?
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brian, yes.
Clap, yes.
Tom?
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
That
is 900 with 9 present. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
you
I appreciate your
coming
time.
by.
Thanks, Fred.
Guys, we're off to a really great start. We discussed it, we voted unanimously,
Okay.
and we're moving on.
Well, we should collect a few thoughts on why we think it's a great idea.
Okay, true.
So, just,
But I just wanted to acknowledge our starting off on a good note.
oh, yeah. So does anybody have any thoughts on what would be a succinct? I mean, it seemed to me that the program is, they are, on our impetus, they are pushing more towards trying to gather data. And for instance, that 300% increase in sale of desserts is actually a real sort of number, which is more than we had before.
The only comment I would make is that it's hard to figure out return on investment in $5,000.
Right.
And I think as important, in my view, is that when Mark Zepf goes around and visits at businesses, it shows that Westborough is business friendly, and it gives him the opportunity to engage in a meaningful conversation and helping out some of these small businesses. So I think we're going to continue to struggle on finding the return on investment, but
Yeah.
I think there's some meaning beyond that.
Yeah, and I agree that I think if you're owning a small business and this kind of program exists and you received it, I think you'd have a positive attitude about the town, and maybe you'd think twice about deciding to move to Northborough or Marlborough or something.
Well, and I think from sort of an unmeasurable perspective, even the businesses in town that don't receive the grant, right? That
Yeah.
business-friendly sort of feeling has really those unmeasurable benefits that I think are important. And if you look at really the price tag on the program versus that sort of
Yeah.
unmeasurable sort of return, I think that it's,
And the only price tag is we have to live with billboards.
and we have to live with billboards.
That's what I
I mean, in theory, we could use the billboard money for something else.
Right.
That's true.
So it is actually a price tag, but it is.
Gene?
I just want to point out, I think that these kinds of programs, well, first of all, I do think the value is measurable, even if it's $5,000, but I think oftentimes it's a much longer time horizon to measure it. The companies that see these grants, what happens to them in 10 years, 15 years, 5 years down the road is probably as important as what happens to them a year after they get the grant. So, that's one of the reasons I think it's an important program to keep funding so that we can see some of the longer term effects.
And I like your thing about giving a reason for Mark to visit people too, right? His contact.
Right.
Sorry, Beth,
I
go
also
ahead.
think that one of the things about these grants is the impact on the shopper, I'm gonna say the shoppers and consumers and residents in town to have a nice variety of businesses, so we just don't look like a giant strip mall exactly like every other town anymore. I mean, what is it? Something and pie, coffee and pie. Yes, I did know what pie was. I'm sorry, as a math teacher. But that's a relatively unique looking business, as are some of the other businesses in that strip mall, so it doesn't look like the one in Northborough, the one in Marlborough, the one in, we have some uniqueness because of this program as a town, and I think that's a plus for residents.
Okay.
Walter, I think that there's another opportunity that it occurs to me we didn't pass along, and as other communities in the neighborhood around us must be doing some version of this, or at least some of them are. Maybe there's an opportunity to learn from other groups how they're measuring things, what they're tracking, what their methodology is. It's a small group, it's a small number, but best practice is going to come from a larger group of people quicker if we share.
And who is our EDC liaison? Is it Tom? Is it you? Is it me? I don't remember.
I think it's Jeff.
I'll have to look it up.
Who's not here? We can give it to them.
I can pull it
Anyway,
up real quick.
I think keeping an eye on what they're up to, and you're a little buried at work right now, but when you.
Hey, I think they have a
moment.
meeting tomorrow.
Well, you can watch them on TV whenever you want. They're also on Westborough TV. Okay, very good. A couple of updates. I did receive from our town clerk the details of what went into that election budget for next year. And I didn't bother sending it out on Sunday night because we had enough to read for this night. But I'm going to send it out probably tomorrow, and that we can discuss on Thursday. We'll see if we actually need her in to explain it more or whether that's sufficient. So let's review that. We can do that. On Thursday, we also have the Historic Commission coming in. So with that, I would like to go back and see if we can't vote a couple more of these anyway. And if there are reasons to wait, we can wait. But I'm pretty sure we could vote on the town reports, because this is hearing the reports from ourselves and from the other, the town manager and some other people. So maybe a motion on that to put it in play.
Sure. McMahon, I move that the Finance Committee recommend the town vote to hear the reports of the town officers and committees.
Bradley, second.
Okay, so that's and a Brad. Okay, any further discussion? This one's a little self-obvious, so Prashant,
Pooja, yes.
Beth,
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Shafford, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Okay,
Sorry, Gene, Shafford, yes.
900. 9, so that's good.
It's 2 in a row.
All right, current Article 3 is prior year bills, and we did cover this briefly at the meeting, and at the moment, it's $163.92 for the golf course budget from Country Club retained earnings, so if nobody has a problem with that, let's get that one out of the way.
You're
Uh-oh.
mute.
We can't.
Gene
You're
lost
muted,
sound.
Gene.
Oh, he's muted.
Yeah.
Sorry, I actually don't have the number in front of me. Could
Article
someone make
3.
that motion?
Article 3 of the version 2. Well, it probably was in the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. McMahon, make a motion that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer from available funds money to pay prior year bills.
I think you want to say
Can I make this?
Country Club retained
Yeah.
earnings,
There's are there two articles? Oh, I see, you're right.
163.92.
163.92 from Country Club retained earnings.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Clap second.
Okay. Any discussion? Have to pay our bills. Okay. Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so it's 900. All right. The next one is also a Country Club retained earnings for the superintendent contract, Article 4.
McMahon, I make a motion that the advisory committee recommend the town vote to transfer $2,792 from Country Club retained earnings
Bradley,
to adjust the
second.
superintendent contract budget.
Bradley, second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that's also 900. Okay. So the next one I think we may be able to vote is currently Article 10A, which are the four reserve funds. AFC, Country Club Reserve, Enterprise Reserve, and Sewer. Anybody feel like we can't do that now?
I
Or you
would
want
like,
to study it further?
no, I would like to understand this article better,
Okay.
particularly maybe for us new people,
Yeah.
us newer people.
Okay.
So what's the,
Broadly, what
yeah.
we're doing is we're transferring money from, in the general fund, free cash, to the AFC reserve, and from the other funds, from their retained earnings, which is effectively their free cash, into a reserve for those items. So the Country Club has 20,000, water has 50,000, and sewer has 50,000 for unexpected.
so why is it, I guess the question I have on the enterprise funds, why aren't they just included in other articles? What's different about them than, say, 19 water management improvements?
Oh,
Or-
because
or
these are part of
21s.
these are part of the town's reserves by their fiscal policies, that there's a reserve for those. So reserves must be approved, I believe, by us for use.
But for instance, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, Article
Number,
like
number,
19.
19 water management improvements, 21 sewer system improvements. Why are those,
Because those are purposeful things they want to do next year that they're saying now they want us to approve them doing this year. Whereas this other money is in essence the in case something goes wrong and you need to buy 3 extra valves or something. It's your slush fund in essence, right?
Okay.
I think a lot of years, a lot of these don't get used up, but since they come from those funds, retained earnings and return to it, it's kind of a wash, but it provides a mechanism that if Chris needed $20,000 to replace a valve somewhere, either wait for an article or he could come for a transfer from this fund.
Could he come to the AFC?
Yes, I believe all those go to the AFC.
But I mean, if there was,
Oh, no, because
shucks
the
thing.
AFC's general reserve does not pay into the water.
no, but
They're separate
could he
buckets.
could he come to the AFC and say, I need $50,000 out of retained earnings because the pipe blew on XYZ Street?
So out of his retained earnings as opposed to out of the reserve fund, right? So no, we can't approve
Okay,
expenditures out of their retained earnings. That
Okay.
requires the town.
okay,
So what we're doing is they give it to us
yep.
to hold it in case you need it, because otherwise you have to go to a town meeting.
Oh,
So if there's-
so we still have to approve, yeah, they have to come to us to
Yes.
get this money?
Yes.
Okay,
So
Okay.
everybody gives us a little bit of money that we hold, and towards the end of the year, they'll come in and say,
Okay.
I actually need another $5,000
Okay.
for this
Okay.
thing.
All right.
And we've set aside their funds already.
okay.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's a mechanism without a town meeting to buy some small amount of
It's that small
stuff,
buffer.
Yep.
which was unanticipated.
Okay.
So if I understand correctly, essentially, instead of paying from the retained earnings, they could actually give it to us, we hold it for them. And if, let's say, they need it, they can come to us if it's,
Yeah, they don't, I mean, it just sits in an account that's marked reserve fund, so it really.
Essentially, the town votes to give us the authority to
spend
allow up to
$50,000.
$50,000 of their retained earnings for unforeseen things at the end of the year. But yeah, that's the difference. We can't approve an
Eh.
expenditure from town funds.
Yep.
The town has given this committee of 9 the authority to allow expenditures up to that 50,000,
50,000.
And,
Got it.
or 250 total, right? But 50,000 for each of those.
well,
items.
specific
250 is for the town budgets.
Right.
That are not related to water, sewer.
Got it.
So, just like we saw the legal budget.
Right.
Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Or the snow and ice can come out of the general fund, bigger
Yep.
reserve.
Got it.
All right, so does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Are we comfortable, or we want to think about it for a while?
I just wanted to add
Yeah.
one more, because that was a question lingering from the Summit Funds meeting. I remember that for the golf club, they had mentioned about the utility vehicle and the rough mower. I think it's got
Those
it,
are in the capital budget, yes.
that's in the capital budget. So
Yeah.
that money is really coming out from the country club retained earnings.
Yes.
So could we keep it with us and replace it when they need it? Like, let's say, because it's, what I heard from them in the summit was, it's a very just-in-time thing. Like, if it gets out of service, they can go and they can buy it. They just need an approval from us to, say, okay, this has gone bad, we need it. Can we get the
So
funds?
I would expect for capital, no.
Okay,
I would expect for capital, it still needs to go to town meeting.
sure.
So they want to buy something that meets the threshold for a capital expenditure. I mean, in theory, they could get approval and then not buy it.
Okay,
Well, not only that.
And then it would
you
stay in
have
their
to move
retained
a lot
earnings.
bigger number. Right now, they have 20,000 in their reserve, and those two things are 65 and
Right.
95,000, so you'd be putting a huge number there, but.
Right. But yeah, I mean,
I think you're probably right. The fiscal policy, I think, for the reserves is for unexpected
Right.
expenses, more like emergency or just unanticipated, like happened in the legal funds perhaps, or, because I think if you anticipate it, you probably
You
have
should
the
have budgeted
obligation
it.
to bring it to town meeting.
I would also expect that specifically because it's capital,
sure.
the purchasing rules would require a warrant
That's-
item. Right, you
Okay.
can't bury that in your budget.
Yeah.
A capital purchase needs to be separately voted. But to that end, you could get approval for it and then not buy it
Yeah.
because you didn't need it. And that would stay in your retained earnings, and
Right.
you could get approval every year in case you needed to buy it and not buy it. That
Right.
seems,
Yeah, I mean, in
that would be an
theory,
odd
if this
process.
gets voted for, they could wait 6 months to buy that.
Correct.
It's still an article and it's still there
Right, they
forever,
still have
in
the
essence,
approval.
until they buy it, so.
They could wait 2
Well,
years
that's
and
true,
buy
it
it.
doesn't close out. They could
Right.
just get approval to buy it and wait. The problem is, and the reason that they schedule it though, is that, I mean, we've seen the lead time on some of the vehicles and
Yeah.
stuff, right? What if it breaks and
Yeah, in the
They
middle
go
of the
to-
season.
breaks mid-mow,
Yeah.
and they're 6 months out from a new one? And I think that's really the problem they're solving, is getting ahead of those maintenance and reliability issues, but.
Yeah, I suspect most of the capital, if it isn't like paying for like the surveys and studies, most of the capital they're probably purchasing not, as soon as they get the money, and then waiting the 3, 6, 12 months to get it. So that doesn't work as effectively if they wait for us to disperse the money. Like, they still have that 3, 6, 12 months.
Is it true that you can't put a capital expenditure in the budget, in their budget? You couldn't put a $25,000 mower?
Oh, in the budget every year? I guess you could, but that's not, I think it's against sort of the town.
I don't
budget
actually know if you
policy.
can, but
That
that
was
would be
my
a
question.
question
Yeah.
for the finance director.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if we were curious, we could clarify. I'm confident
Would
that
it
there's
be the
probably a
same one every
rule.
year?
So, I
And that's the problem why it's not in the budget, because you try to, if you have like, you know, you put the fire truck in the fire department budget, it looked like it went up by 800K.
But I think that there is some, and DPW is the place where I think this happened, and Beth may recall the days we used to vote for 10 fire hydrants every budget, every
Yeah,
capital
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we
cycle.
threw that
And
in
the
the
fact
budget.
is, they moved that to a recurring budget line,
Right.
so that they're still replacing X fire hydrants on the same cycle, so that you have like a 50-year timeline to go through the entire town. But we don't see it. It used
Yeah,
to appear in
and
the capital.
pumps, I think, every year they came.
Well, the pumps they haven't buried. That they're still. I think they've
Yeah, but I
just
think
stopped
there's
doing
a-
new pumps.
Oh, okay.
'Cause those were-
We used to do monthly years.
Yeah, I think he created a line.
I think it's the water management and sewer system
Yeah.
improvements.
He
that-
created more a
Okay.
generic line.
Right.
Instead of every time coming and explaining what a pump is and a valve and a shut off. I guess.
Makes sense. We have it.
But, yeah, you're right, Andrew, that, there were things that made more sense if you're gonna do that every year,
Yes.
some amount of equipment. Okay, so should we take a whack at the reserve funds? Somebody?
Sure. McMahon, I make a motion that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $250,000 from free cash to the Finance Committee General Reserve Fund, $20,000 from the Country Club retained earnings to the Country Club Reserve Fund, $50,000 from water retained earnings to the Water Enterprise Reserve, and $50,000 from sewer retained earnings to the Sewer Enterprise Reserve Fund.
And-
Blumberg, second.
Okay, Bloomberg, yes, and then the only one of these that I see going away all the time or more often is the general fund one, I think, because that seems to have more and the others don't seem to get as used, at least in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I think for the last 3 years, this is comment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The last 3 years, I think we've actually added like another $50,000 to ours. So the question is, why aren't we doing 300,000 so that the town actually sees that we're using about $300,000 every year? So I'm happy to stay with 250. I would raise this concern if I thought it was pressing. But if this is going to be 4 years in a row that we keep asking for 50,000 additional later,
Yeah, I think
I-
that, right, we're going to fall town meeting or this
Mhm.
year we're going to spring town meeting and probably asking for some more to refresh the fund. It's an article in here. Does it make sense to start with more or not? I don't know.
I'll have the
Yes.
numbers later next year.
Yeah.
I'll bring the numbers to my concern next year, but just an
Yeah.
observation.
It's a good point.
We've been making this observation for a number of years in a row.
Yeah, last year we didn't, I don't think we ran out actually, because we didn't have any snow and ice. Overage.
Right.
Which was, I think, somewhat rare.
Yeah, I don't think we
This year we
increased it
probably
last
will.
year, but I would be
Although-
curious to see how
Yeah, we
often.
didn't
There
last
is a caveat that if you over budget the reserve fund, or if you over budget snow and ice, then it comes back and bites you later.
No, we're not over budgeting snow and ice, we're talking about the reserve fund.
Right, okay.
In reserve fund, you can overspend.
Yeah, because if it's there, it just falls to free cash. So. Okay, so let's leave it where it is for now and
Yep.
think about that as something for our future. So it's one vote for all four. There's no real reason to split them because I don't see any objections. So, Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes?
Okay, that's also 900. Right, how we doing on time? Okay, not bad. All right, so that's it. The next one I would recommend is the cable TV budget. This in essence transfers the money from their enterprise fund that allows them to spend it. It comes from their money to their money, but the way the town operates, you have to do that. And that is currently Article 10C. Anybody have any? Yep. All right. Why don't you put it in play?
McMahon, I move that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town transfer from the cable TV enterprise funds $300,000 to fund the fiscal '25 cable TV budget.
Bradley, second.
Okay, and that is 10C, so that's McMahon and Bradley, okay. And that money all comes in from, I guess, between Verizon and Charter, they get that money. Right, okay. Any further comments? If not, Prashant, you can start.
Ahuja, yes.
Beth?
You're on mute?
Blum, yes.
Bradley,
Yeah,
yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that's also 900, okay. These are easy ones. Anybody need more information on the July 4th block party from Recreation, $3,500?
I just have a comment.
Yep.
So why is this, what's the benefit of making this a free cash article?
What's the alternative?
Put it in,
It
put it in the,
uses free
put it in,
cash.
put it in the budget.
Yeah, why isn't it in the Recreation Department's budget?
I think what's happened before is, well, I think historically, sometimes it got canceled because of rain. And then also, I think it always seemed like a nice to have, it might be the reason. And so it let people on a recurring basis decide at town meeting, hey, do you want to have a block party? It's going to cost you $3,500. Plus they do fundraising, because I know many organizations donate to it, but we can ask that question from Rec if you want. Go ahead, Ben.
I think at some points, the fundraising actually exceeded what the starter we gave it, and we didn't actually have to spend money. But I'm not sure, for sure about that.
I think there's an allure, Rod, as you know, to paying for things with so-called free cash, because it sounds like it's free.
But, you know,
But it actually, in essence, is an
I-
annual item.
I actually have the opposite sentiment.
Yeah.
I'd rather see things in the budget and give the free cash back to the taxpayers. In other words, instead of giving $450,000 to cut the taxes, let's give them $1 million to cut the taxes and stop taking things out of free cash. And if we're going to spend it, let's put it in the budget.
And that is,
But I don't think we consistently spend it, which is why we didn't put it in the budget.
But then
That
it just
might be.
goes to free cash.
Or they
We
use
have
it to
to
cover
always
other
what it-
expenses. Yeah.
Or whatever else the department might spend it on.
Yeah.
Right.
As
Yeah.
free, as a warrant article, it is targeted and they're not gonna be able to move it around.
Oh, okay.
Because if it's in their budget,
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
inter-transfer.
I believe also, if it got rained out, they could use the money the next year and potentially not come forward, because these articles go on, whereas the budget, if you don't spend it by June 30th, it's gone.
So I'm meeting with rec tomorrow, the rec meeting. Do you want me to ask?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Find
Is
out
that
the
question or
history,
the fish question?
but I think that might be.
Yeah, let's hear about how many.
Oh, yeah,
fish
we're
we
gonna
get.
get more
Alright.
info on the fish, too. Okay, so let's skip that one for now.
$15 a fish.
How about, are people updated enough on town hall security, Article 11A, capital item? It's $107,313 for, town hall security system. We did talk about it at the budget summit. Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, let's put that one in play. Currently, Article 11A.
Do we know what exactly are they gonna do with this money? Like, what exactly will they be deploying? Is it the security cameras? What are they
I think it's in the book.
in the book on what they plan?
It might be in the
Capital.
section in the back of the book.
Okay.
Because they did bring that, but we take our time. Or we can do
Yeah,
that next
there is
Thursday
details.
if you want.
Well, what's the current amount? I'm reading off version 1.
Oh, the current,
107,313.
the current amount
Thank you.
here is, 107,313. Is that different than one?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So McMahon, I will move that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $107,313 from free cash for the purpose of purchasing, installing, and upgrading the security system for town hall.
So I should probably know, I'll wait till a second.
Is there a second?
Bradley second.
Okay, now.
So in the book, it was 89,813. I'm sure we had a explanation at one point.
Yeah, well, there's also in the explanation in the article, looks like they got some kind of Massachusetts grant. So the total cost is $129,812, but they only need the 107.
Yeah, so the grant ended up being less than they had initially anticipated,
Oh.
which is what drove our cost up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it went up.
Oh,
That's
It went
right,
up.
it was
Right.
89.
so it must have been a $40,000 grant and we got
Yeah, when the governor came out with the renewed budget, they cut some chunk out of that
Okay.
particular one. Okay, everybody good to go?
Yep.
Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
It's 900. So is it safe to say that people feel that it's a good investment to have better
To have
security in our
an
buildings?
alarm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of what to write in the book. But that's
Oh, I
kinda-
know, I
that's kinda
just
the
was
feel,
pointing out
right?
that like, because I'm a little bit reluctant to agree to any increase in spending because the increase is so significant this
Right.
year. But this one seems sort of necessary, right? Are no cameras, there's no alarm system, there's no access control. And I think those all seem, in this day and age, pretty straightforward
Right.
necessities. So
And if
that's what I
something
would
happened
put,
and we
right?
don't have that stuff, it seems very
Right.
archaic.
Well, and especially, right, so we have employees who are in here, right? I went to fill up my water bottle before I came upstairs. There are employees here working.
Yeah,
And the front door is unlocked, right? There's no access control here. We had somebody light the lobby of the police station on fire. Certainly, we could. So,
yeah.
it's a realistic concern, and it seems a pretty straightforward security measure that in this day and age is well justified.
I guess my only point is, does it mean we all need access now to enter it?
Well, so this is an open meeting, so it'll have to be open. So I assume Walter, the same as he has
I
a
have a
key
key.
now, will have to have some sort of, I assume it's gonna be card access or something. You'll have an access card instead of a physical key or some Who knows?
You might just come in and turn off the alarm, but
That's true.
honestly, most nights when I come in, there's already people working, cleaning, so it might not be on. Whoever leaves last probably has to turn it on. Or if it's just
Or
security
it's
cameras, they're on
timed,
all
or-
the time, and
right.
maybe it isn't sort of the door's open, I'm ringing a bell kind of alarm.
Right.
That I don't know.
Because the article does mention access control as well, so it's not just
Okay,
the
so
cameras,
maybe
it's
there will
also the
be.
So the,
access
right,
control.
that's why I was
so
assuming it's card access or
Yeah.
timed
Exactly,
access,
timed
right?
access,
So that it
right.
could be a timed access or card access of some sort.
So we'll find out. We have time to get to this.
But yeah, to your point, yes, it's an absolute must-have to secure the town hall.
So I'm really reluctant to spend money on many things, but I feel like that's a hard one to argue, so.
Okay. Next up, fire department. Anybody need more info on that? We covered it at the meeting.
The mobile column list.
Yeah, the only question I had, and I apologize, and I'll apologize again, I'm not convinced that the slab was meant to support a lift like that. I actually tried to look at the archives in the building department, couldn't find them last night. If you wanted to hold
Oh,
off.
is that because now you're putting the weight in a smaller number of square feet, so pounds per square inch of the lift is much higher than the truck, which is the same weight, but it's got
Well, it's got wheels,
8
so
tires,
yeah,
so
yeah.
they're spread out.
Right, right.
Somewhat spread out more. I mean,
Yeah.
They were gonna
But
put
there's-
one of these under each tire, so it's the difference between what the tire area is and this lift.
Yeah.
Probably
I
not
don't
that
think it's
huge
one
of a
under
difference.
each tire based on the picture, is it?
There's 6.
It is, it's one under each tire.
Well, under
I would
each
imagine there's more
set of
surface area.
wheels. So the double wheels in the
Yeah,
back have
and it's
one
got
lift.
Two.
But you
forks.
have one under the front and 2 and 3, I guess, when the vehicle's big enough to have that many.
This is a good discussion, I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, why don't you look into that a little more? We don't have to vote, I mean, we're still a ways away here, so I'm just trying to catch low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
And if there's interest in other
So,
stuff.
so Rod, are you gonna follow up on this, or do you want me to get in touch with the chief on this?
Actually, I hit his email and it got back. I hit the email on the website and it came back to me. Oh, it's probably the old one.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is the old
You
one.
gotta
Yeah,
go to westboro.gov or whatever.
Gene, if you don't mind, Gene, if you're.
Although, I will say, you did ask the chief this already, and he did say that yes. So maybe there's an engineer or somebody you wanna check with the town instead of the chief, right?
Like the building department.
I would just like to know the thickness of the slab and whether it's reinforced or not.
Okay, I can check with him. If he's not the right person, he'll,
All I need
It
is the
might be
drawing.
is there a town engineer?
All I need is the drawing of the,
Yeah,
Okay.
who would have that? More like the building department
should be the
or
building
something.
department. It wasn't in their archive, at least I couldn't find it. I should have asked Fred when he was here.
Okay.
Well, going down a road, I apologize.
It's okay. That's pretty good.
no worries, I'll ask.
Okay. Next up would be an ambulance replacement. Everybody set on that? This is, let's see, it's 308,498 from free cash and 123 from ambulance receipts reserve. So I think at
Can I ask one question?
yeah,
Because I missed this portion of the budget summit. Are we still waiting on in terms of our cycling, are we still waiting on an ambulance, or are we current and this is a new replacement?
I don't think we're waiting on a new one. I think we're at full fleet right now, and this is gonna be replacing one of the ones we have right now.
yeah.
Okay,
It
fine.
might show
I
in the
wasn't sure
budget book.
we're in the cycle.
I'm trying to remember the
Wait,
conversation from,
didn't Chief Purcell say we were waiting on one that,
That's
what
the
I thought.
fire trucks.
oh, it was fire trucks.
definitely trucks we are waiting on.
There's 2 trucks.
Oh, I see.
But I think
Okay.
the
Two
ambulance is,
trucks.
I don't know if we're waiting for an ambulance. But they are wearing out quicker because they're getting a lot more use.
I was gonna say, we're using them faster,
Yeah.
so I wasn't sure if our original thought of cycle was accurate.
Oh, and
The
I-
fire, for whatever reason, thank you, knock on wood and all that, the ambulances do not seem to be getting in accidents the way the police cars are. Sorry,
so-
just
So Beth, this one's replacing a 2016 ambulance, 135,000 miles and 7,000 engine hours. At the time of the replacement, it'll be 11 years old. And the 2018 ambulance moves back to the backup, and this one moves forward, so.
I am curious about the breakout between free cash and ambulance receipts. So we know ambulance receipts are up significantly. Is there a reason why we don't cover the full capital purchase with ambulance receipts?
I don't think we have that much money in there. I
So-
don't
so
remember
how-
when, I think,
I mean, I thought they were
I'd
up-
have to go back and see when the
That's
money
receipts
was.
versus free cash, the reserves.
Yeah,
So they don't put all of the money they get into reserves. It's still a fair
Right.
question,
Yeah.
but
I was gonna say,
Receipts.
how
Or-
does that get funded, though?
Are they splitting it over the number of ambulances, are they splitting the reserves over the number of ambulances they have so that there's always some waiting?
all right, let's just ask.
Yep.
I think speculation
You're right, it is
is
receipt
kind of a
reserve, so
waste.
I'm curious how they allocate
Sure.
between reserve and not, and I just want to
So,
understand
Jean,
the
you want to
process.
start with the chief, and if not, we can go through the finance department and find out. I don't know whether they only have so much money in that, or the town allocated money there at one point. They were putting, like, every year we have, 2 million in ambulance receipts. We take 100K and put it into this fund to buy a new one, so every 3 years we have some money, or.
Which would
what-
then lead to the question, though, should we be putting more in because it's not
Right.
covering, is really where I'm going, right? The
Right.
process and understanding how
But
we
I
build
think
up
what
that
happened
reserve.
was we decided we needed one more than we used to need.
I
And
think this is
that's
Maybe
why
we
we
need
to
bought
change
one
the
a little
reserve.
ahead of,
Okay.
But
Uh,
just
yeah.
for instance, the budget for ambulance in 2023 was 2,000,010. Or no, the actual was 2,000,010, the budget was 1,645,000. So theoretically, there's
It's
$350,000 of
Right.
ambulance receipt money if it all went.
ambulance receipt money is closer, I
It
think,
goes
to
to
$2
free
million,
cash.
but it goes into the general fund, it doesn't go to the,
Right, and so how does
Oh.
it get into the reserve?
yeah, that's a
My
good question. So that's why we could,
Yep.
it'd be worth us knowing that. We're supposed to know that thing, so that's great. It's how we
I would sure
learn.
hate for
We
somebody
have
to
these
ask a town
questions and we
meeting
learn.
and us all just stare at them.
Okay, so let's skip C and go to D, police vehicles. This is 4 of them this year. I think next year he thinks he's back to the 3. And this is currently Article 11D. I don't hear any complaints, so why don't you start it, Gene?
McMahon, I make a motion that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $265,000 from free cash to, for the purchasing 2 police vehicles.
Excuse me.
3.
Is there a second?
Four.
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 4, okay, sorry.
Do we
I
hear
didn't
4
write it
vehicles?
up.
About for 4.
I thought it was for police vehicles.
Yep.
I'm sorry, it has amended 4 police vehicles.
So what-
Okay.
what-
Really
what-
support 2.
Second,
So why is it 4 this year instead of 3?
It was 4 last year, too. I think they were, again, catching up because they added people. And he showed us the chart of how old they were and where they were, and then I think he said next year that we could get back to 3. My recollection. I'd like to
He
ask
did
more,
show
we
us
can
a
ask
chart.
more.
can we request to the police chief very gently that the police vehicles that get hit, the ones that are by the side of the road and get hit with no officers getting hurt, be the oldest ones first?
Oh, we could, but that's
Ha, ha, ha.
not too constructive. I'm sure they'd be
Sorry.
glad if that happened, but,
Yeah.
so people need more information, or we're okay?
Moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded, okay. So let's take a vote.
Ahuja, yes.
Lumber, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, that's 900, okay. Right, I just don't want to lose time, it's 8 o'clock, 8:04, so we'll keep going a little bit. Okay, next up is 11E admin vehicles for DPW, Building Department, and Health Department. There's 3 of them. For some reason, my voting record is missing the title for the admin vehicles. Anybody need more time with this?
So I tried to do some unscientific homework. So there's, as I understand it from Chris, we have 6 admin vehicles. Replacing 3 in 1 year seems like a lot. Of those 6, 2 are over 10. So just based on my math, I would vote against it. I don't think we can change the number of vehicles. It's just yes or no, right?
We could make a motion, I guess, to recommend they buy 2, but we'd have to figure it out, and I would put it off the table for now until that was figured out and we could look into it. Or we could get him here to explain why he particularly needs 3 now versus 2. I think they're being used in 3 different departments.
They are,
It's
although
part of
there's
it.
some vehicle sharing. So I recommended the same thing of just 2 this year so that we could start spacing them out a
Yeah.
little bit better. And the sentiment
Just-
from, I'm sorry? Sorry. The sentiment from the other folks in capital expenses was that the need was there because all 3 vehicles had reached a certain point of deficit that they would need to be, that they couldn't, Sophie's choice, one of them, which one to remove, so that their belief was that it should be all 3. I'm amenable to exploring what it means to cut it back to 2, because I feel strongly that we should be talking about ways that we can, curtail some of the spending.
Okay, so let's
So,
bring that up another, well, who can look into that?
I also just wanted to point out the warrant actually does not say it's for 3 vehicles. In the article information, it mentions 3 vehicles, but the warrant itself is just about money.
So if you look at the capital
Just-
project request also, they have the 3 vehicles this year, but they don't have any in the subsequent years. So we're saying replace 3. Apparently we have 6, so the other 3 we're just not gonna worry about until.
Yep.
There's seemingly
I
some
think the other
gaps in
3
the
are
planning.
pretty new.
But they should still be on the 5-year schedule if we're saying that every 5 years they
maybe
need to
not
be
5 year.
replaced.
the feedback for that, and I asked that question as well, is that these are not expected to age at the same rate because they're 3 different departments, and so they would, though we look at it as sort of spacing it out a little bit more over time, as these things age, they would age naturally into a more a natural replacement rate. It just so happens to hit now.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
I
pointing out the
wouldn't be
other 3
sim-
that we're not replacing
No, I
do not
understand.
appear to be on the schedule at all. So we're saying the 3 we're not replacing are good for at least 5 years.
They're probably good for 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Okay.
just a car. They're not emergency vehicles. They're not.
I mean, that is a valid point.
It's not like, you're running to check out a building.
But so to that end, they're not emergency vehicles, we could probably push one off a year.
We could probably do.
Right, I mean, that same logic.
I mean, I would still want to look at it, exactly what their schedule is and why they need it. But then, considering the emergency, I would go with the sentiment that if you have a sewer leaking or you have something wrong on the road, you need that fixed. You wouldn't let the sewer leak until, we don't have a vehicle, so you
Correct.
would need that on time.
Correct.
So you would want a vehicle to be there if in case some emergency happens. So I understand it's not like a police vehicle which is responding to an emergency, but it's a near emergency in my opinion, that when they are
Well,
called.
but so these
Well-
aren't the DPW vehicles either.
No.
These are not responding to water sewer.
One
These
is Public
are,
Works, one is Building
one is
Department.
Public Works management of some sort.
Okay.
One is Building Department and the other is Board of Health, right? So these are
Okay.
not,
Board
these
of
are not the
Health is doing their
leadsmen showing
inspections.
up at a sewer leak that I would agree is an emergency. Right, that,
Right, so let's
Not
look
sure
into
that's-
it more.
Yep.
yeah.
I guess we'll come back.
Maybe
So-
it's fine, I just wanna see the plan.
Sure, no, that's fine. That's what we're
So
supposed
you
to
want
do.
me to ask Chris what the plan is for the remainder vehicles? Or what's the question?
I
want
guess
to-
the question is, more details on, why 3 now? What would happen if we only did 2 now?
And what's the
yes, what
expectation
is
for the
this
other three?
plan longer term for
What
the
it
other
means to
three
cut
that
back to
are
two.
somewhat new and
So the years are 2008, 2014, 15, 16, and 2 in 2022.
so the two that are 22 are basically brand new, right? And so, okay, well, I get a little more information,
Okay.
it sounds like.
We're gonna get,
What
they're gonna
happens if we
have
only
to
get two?
estimate, they're gonna have to estimate how long they think those 22s are good for, but how long have they historically right? Like,
Yeah.
I just wanna
Usually what he
see, I get we
says-
only have a 5-year plan, but give us an estimate. Are we talking 10 years or 6?
And
It's just
usually
barely
it's
off
kind
the
of, the
schedule.
ones he wants to replace are getting to the point where they're needing a lot of maintenance, so they become,
Right.
I mean, they're,
Yeah, what happens if we only do 2? Can you limit
so I
one
guess we
along?
can find out
Yeah.
a little more, and if we need Chris in to talk about it, he can come or something. Whatever, maybe there'll be other questions on some of these other ones.
I can't imagine.
We're
I
doing
can
some-
imagine that. All right, how about the 2 one-ton vehicle replacements? Which is,
So we have, oh, actually, I can pull it up. We have 7 one-ton utility vehicles, and two are over 10 years old.
And I believe we still have one on order. If, I think I recall hearing that one of these is still on order, so it's taking us a long time to replace these.
I mean, so
And do these also serve as snowplows in the winter?
everything that you can attach a plow to serves as a snow plow in the winter.
yeah,
So yes, so they get significant wear and tear, and that's the thing. So we're looking at 10-year-old vehicles that they're plowing snow, they're salting. I mean, I think where I want to argue the admin vehicles and understand more, these ones seem pretty straightforward from my perspective.
But how many do we need?
Every single one of them plows.
But how many do we need?
Well, and this is not
Good
too far
question.
removed conversation from, we talk about level funding our services right now. If we're looking at this sort of a gap, I listened to the presentation. I never heard anybody challenge the assumption that we shouldn't be level funding. So everything that I heard was predicated on level funding services. And I don't know if snowplows are the right place to cut, but services are services. You know, I think that there's a conversation to be had when the jump seems this large. So I think that might be a Christie question at the higher level.
Well, or I like the idea too. What does it look like if we don't replace a truck? What does it look like operationally with one less truck in the fields, right? I mean, it's not to say we have to vote
So
that
is-
way or we've
is-
been pushing for that, but it's a reasonable question to ask Chris. What does it look like if you had one less truck on the road?
so like, why
I
don't we
think
plan
that
on
needs to be
asking
paid
Chris to
for
come to a
contract
meeting
services.
and talk
I'd
truck?
like to ask the question, is it better to buy a truck and pay an employee or to contract services for a truck
We do both.
during a snow season?
We do
I know
both.
we do both. I
And
know we do both, but where's the balance? Like, clearly it's not buy so many trucks we never need to use contract services, but clearly it's also not just use contract services.
Well, and I think these ones have more use than just plowing snow too. But so I think it comes back to, and I agree with Beth, right? It's a question of what would it look like if we had one less truck? And maybe Chris would come in and say we couldn't possibly, and it would be catastrophic, or maybe he'll come in and say, well, you can expect to wait 20 more minutes when it snows, or, right? I mean, I think it's worth posing the question to understand from a level of service perspective, what would it mean to have one less truck?
Okay.
And I will tell you where snow is concerned, one of the earliest advocations for having these things is safety. I mean, it's not just a time thing, it's literally a safety thing. And we make conscious decisions about safety, and at least in the conversations that happened in the Capital Committee, the determination is made that to meet levels of safety, not time, not
Yep.
snowplow or things like that, this is the fleet that's being requested. So I say that only to preempt the conversation in terms of what you may hear some of.
I mean, it's a valid
In
point.
essence,
It is.
you rely on your director to make a recommendation, which is what this is. Right? So-
Right.
Okay, how about 6-wheel dump trucks? Is that same boat? Might as well cover these all at once. The jet vac. Okay.
So the jet vac, so again, I would argue, because I happen to have asked somebody, the six-wheel dump truck and the jet vac are both ones that are a single vehicle being replaced that are at a point where it is necessary. We did talk through the jet vac at the budget summit also and questioned, you know, do we need one? Could we lease one? Could we rent one as needed? And it is, to people have sort of alluded to other things, it's an emergency response vehicle. And I don't want to be on the other end of a sewer leak when we don't have a jet vac that operates. Derek told us that they use it multiple times a week, and the one they have is at or close to end of life. And so it's one where I think is a little, again, we could wait and we could ask Chris because we're already asking
Well,
Chris
I mean, I
questions,
heard
but it's
enough
one
on
that
the
I
jet
think,
vac at the
right,
meeting, so.
as did I. I mean,
But
I
if
feel
other
like
people want to hear more, they can, but I'm okay.
that was just
Maybe
my
it
argument
does.
for I think we could vote that one unless
I
you
would
guys
agree.
want to.
I mean, the way I see it is it's also coming from the earnings, it's not a free
Yeah.
cash. So I think it's a bit more straightforward compared to asking something from the free cash.
And it is a one-for-one replacement. It's not.
It comes from sewer, water, and stormwater.
Correct.
627 articles isn't quite right there. Okay, so how people feel about the six-wheel dump truck? You ready to go on that one or no? You wanna
So
wait?
I'm okay
where's,
voting
is that one in the book? Oh,
The six-wheel dump truck
Yeah.
is page 289,
okay.
and the jet vac is 290. They're both large, expensive pieces of equipment, but relatively straightforward and necessary, I would argue. And give you a look, the jet vac is a 2007.
So this isn't a light dump truck. This is a 10-wheel. So we have,
No, it's a
It's a
six.
six-wheel.
I got
It's
you.
a six-wheel
Okay.
dump truck.
okay.
So it's got a dualies in the back. It's one set of dualies in the back and front, right? Sort of like a small dump truck.
So, and here you see the issue we're asking for the next 3 years. We're asking for a new dump truck every year for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I think this is their main, I mean,
Right,
that's
and I
what they
think it's a
mostly
heavy
drive, right,
use.
for everything?
Yep.
So again,
So,
we talk about emergency and, go ahead.
Gene?
I was just gonna say, so I agree, I've heard enough on the jet vac truck replacement to vote tonight. However, if Chris is gonna come in to talk about his capital items, it probably makes sense to just vote them all at the same time, because they're all replacement. So we're really talking about sequencing and scheduling, and if we're gonna vote against one and for another, or if somebody's thinking that way, it makes sense to think about them all at once, I think. So, you know, if we're gonna bring them in to talk about some of them, I just recommend we wait and do them all at the same night.
I think that makes sense, right? If what we're looking at is
Right.
level funding the replacement, you're right. Looking at all of them at once makes sense.
Okay, so let's move on to recreation. They have 2 vehicles coming out of country club retained earnings. People need more information on that?
I guess my only comment is why are we doing them both the same year? Is this something
Yep.
that's so far behind? I would say pick one. And I wouldn't be smart enough to tell you which one to pick.
They must bring in some good cash at the golf course, because they seem to be able to pay for the whole operation and buy equipment every year.
Well, they do now. And that's a testament to what they've turned around. I mean,
Yeah.
that, and it's why
A
I
couple
think
of
we
years ago, we
say,
were paying.
yeah, and we had great people, to take nothing away from the people, but they're running a business effectively, efficiently, and covering their costs. And if, I believe that they feel that this stuff is at a point, and in the conversations with Rec and in the conversations like in the Capitol, you get the sense that they're not just running about buying the latest electrical vehicles just for giggles, that they're really making conscious thoughts of how they do this.
So if you look, Rod, they do have 5 pieces of capital equipment
Mhm.
that are in their replacement stages. So in reality, they have 2 in 1 year, which is really only a little bit faster than staging them one a year, right? We have a 5-year plan in 5 pieces. They could, in theory, space them out one each year, but I do think it's a pretty level set comparatively.
Okay. Is there more information that would help that, or do we want to vote, I guess is what I'm looking for.
Oh, they do only
I'm
run
comfortable
3 years.
voting.
Let's vote it.
All right, let's make motions.
Just voted.
Just voted.
McMahon, I make a motion that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $65,000 from Country Club retained earnings for the replacement and equipping of a utility vehicle.
Bradley, second.
Ahuja, yes.
Okay, jump
Plummer,
in there.
yes.
Bradley, yes.
Love it.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Okay, just to clarify, because is this the utility tractor or
This is the
the?
utility
tractor.
vehicle
Okay.
replacement.
From 1992, I vote yes.
For 65,000. Yes, okay, 900, yeah, that's
We
the
got our
older
money's
one.
worth.
The next is the rough mower, which is not as old, it's 8, I guess that's 9 years old now, too.
McMahon, I make a motion that the Advisory Finance Committee recommend the town vote to transfer $95,000 from Country Club retained earnings for the purpose of replacing and equipping a rough mower.
Bradley, second.
Any further discussion? Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Plummer, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, no.
All right, our first one with some interest. 810.
It's only 9 years old.
Yeah, just trying to capture your thoughts on that is, I think you felt if you could wait another year? Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Okay. So that is 11I.
Do
Okay.
we know the lead time? I know that we voted for already, but this is more in response to Ron. Do we know the lead time between ordering the vehicle and receiving it?
I think they might have told us at the
We
meeting. but
did ask.
honestly,
Yes.
I don't remember.
I
memorize
actually
that.
questioned it at the budget
Yes.
summit,
Right.
and she said it was relatively quick, right? So this
Yes.
is not a multiple year lead time like some of the vehicles we're waiting
It's
on.
not a fire truck.
They
This
just go out
is,
and buy, that's what
Yep.
they said.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's probably it for tonight. I don't feel like digging into all the water and sewer stuff at the moment. It being 8:20, it's probably close enough. We have 2 sets of minutes to deal with, and one of them, I think, we sort of want to go through a little bit. So first, I did receive the minutes for number 16, January 29th, and I'll be sending that out, and we'll discuss those on Thursday. Again, I got them, I felt we had enough to review ahead of this meeting. So the first set of minutes are the shorter ones from the 14th, our meeting number 14 of January 22nd. Does anybody have any corrections, comments on that? Okay, we'll take a motion on the 14th, on the 22nd, January 22nd. Somebody want to move?
McMahon, I make a motion to accept the minutes of January 22nd.
Bradley, second.
Okay, any further discussion on those? Let's do the roll call.
Ahuja, yes.
Plummer, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
clap, yes.
Nolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that's 900. Okay. The next one on January 25th, Rod gave me a little feedback to a couple sentences that were a little squirrely, and Sheila has updated those. There's a lot of meat and potatoes in that thing because it's a huge meeting, and I think she did a good job capturing most of the topics anyway. I don't think it's possible to quite if you captured all the answers in discussion, it would have been a novel, but Are there any other comments or concerns with those minutes?
So the only other comment I had to Walter was
That's what we want to do.
exactly as he said. The questions are there, but the answers aren't. And some of them were answered and some of them weren't. And I guess the question is, are there follow-up items on things that were questioned either by us or the select board that somehow we should be tracking? And,
Yeah, so I'd like to go through them quickly and make sure we capture anything that we were waiting for answers from. Because whether or not that's in the minutes doesn't really matter. It's whether we remember to ask, follow up, right?
Yep.
And I just have to find those minutes somewhere. So let me, it's in the one I just sent today. So I want to bring up that one. Minutes from budget summit, okay. So let me put this up on the screen. Oh, I have to share it, otherwise it does me no good. Okay, Zoom. Zoom share. January 25th, V2, perfect. Okay. Let's see if we can make it a little bigger. Okay, good. I did make it bigger. Good. Okay. So the idea here is if there was something we were waiting for more information on, that would be good for us to capture. I don't recall us waiting for information, but let's look at the advisory questions. Receipts, okay. Were we asking for revenues received and we didn't have that? Ron, you know?
No, I think that was,
I think it was.
I think that was a partial answer to how
Okay.
they set the revenue targets for the coming year.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Impact of CPA on operations, I covered that. Who processes, we covered that. And we covered that. 7 and 8, I don't think we're waiting. I think the only thing we're waiting on 18 was the concern, and I guess we could have asked Fred while he was here, but whether they were in community development, whether, you know, like, was the planning board in favor of that article or not? We'd probably want to know before voting that.
Which one?
This is Article 7 and Article 18 of the town.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So the Article 17 was moving around the finance
Yeah.
person, which made sense. But the other one was a building commission and his job description, and it seems like we'd want to at least hear from those folks. So that's one that I think I circled anyway. This is one we wanted to learn more about fish, right? As I recall.
Working on the fish.
Working on the fish, okay. How many fish are purchased? They were about $15 a piece a few years ago, anyway.
I do wonder about the diesel mower versus electric mower. I don't know if that changes the cost.
Well,
Oh,
cost versus
since-
the cost of ownership too, right? It's not just purchase cost.
Yeah.
Are they proposing an electric one?
No, I
they're
think-
proposing
Yeah.
not. I think people were asking, yeah.
And again, with the diesel versus electric, does it change the longevity if there's less moving engine parts?
You're there?
Initial draft, organized volunteers, okay. I think this one was pretty straightforward. DPW. I think we were talking about the water meter project. What happens if the bid comes in over the town meeting authorization? I guess that's hard to answer. Well, it means you can't buy it. But, and I think the select board took some interest in your more of a annual review meeting. That was more of a here's an idea thing. Okay, police, I don't think they owe us any information. I was surprised by the answer that no other department had done that and we were breaking ground. That was interesting.
All right.
With the corporals. Yeah. I didn't expect that answer. Fire?
I guess the question I raised, and the chief said he'd look into it, but I don't know what our expectations
Well,
are.
the slab support the lifts.
Well, that too, but the ways to manage overtime.
Yeah.
So in years past, one of the other arguments, and I didn't hear it on the town hall, one of the other arguments is that a body can only be at one place at one time, whereas overtime can be flexible and time dependent. So just hiring bodies to put them in there, you could only cover certain shifts and certain days, and 2 people, 12-hour days or 10-hour days, you're not gonna be able to reduce the overtime as much as you think you can, whereas because of the nature of the work, emergencies, that sort of thing, people weren't covered. Some of the senior managers not there and having to bring people in when things happen. The overtime happens more unpredictably than they think they can be offset. Now, that was an answer from like 3 or 4 years ago, when I think we had more overtime at the time, and I have to double check. But I share that only to help round out the feedback.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I mean, it's similar though. So I had kind of the same question with the police and the officer in charge pay, right? And creating this corporal position to offset the officer in charge pay. I candidly asked someone I happened to know who was a police chief his opinion on the structure and was really talking through sort of the pros and cons. And a lot of it comes down to, yes, we could save money in the officer in charge pay by creating this role, but what is really the problem we're trying to solve? And so with the overtime, is it because you have a specialized role where overtime is always going to be necessary, or could you overstaff every shift with just one extra body to negate the need for overtime, right? And so I think it really comes down to what is the problem we're solving.
I think was the issue they're trying to solve,
Yeah.
because
Well, but so you always,
this person could supervise if the sergeant wasn't there, for instance.
well, but so you always have a supervisor. For the police, you always have a supervisor. Your most senior officer is your officer in charge always.
Yeah.
And they get officer in charge pay, which is how we reduce, so it's $59,000 to create this corporal position, offset by the decrease in officer in charge pay that they're awarding to someone who is not a sergeant, who is the most senior officer on shift, serving as the supervisor. Right, so what is the problem we're really solving by creating the
The thing
position?
you're solving is you're creating growth opportunities and leadership training, I think.
Right.
I
Which
applauded
is-
both of them for thinking about
Right.
that, because if you want to grow within your department, you know,
Right.
in any group, having opportunities for people to be able to try some selective leadership and see how they do, also gives them an opportunity to maybe not leave because they're moving up the chain a bit. And I think that, to me, that was the interesting part to me. I was less interested in the wash of this money versus that money. I just thought that it seems like a good way to get people opportunities that you want, the people that you want to reward in a position that you think could be a good sergeant in
Right.
2 years. You give them this role and see how they do,
Well,
and
I
they
could-
start their training.
I mean, I could see that, and that makes sense. I didn't feel like that was the way it was presented, right? Had he presented it as more laddering, right, building that advancement opportunities, had he presented it as a retention? But that wasn't the way I felt like it was presented, and I will admit, that was part of the conversation I had with the chief, not our chief, but the other police
I
chief.
think
haven't
there's
done-
pressure on these
Right,
guys
and
to.
discussing that, because it is, those are both very valid arguments,
Yeah.
and it's hard to, right, certainly providing ladder opportunities and giving people advancement improves your retention, right, it improves morale, and those are valuable, useful things. My question was really in that, is that the problem we're trying to solve? Because if it is, it's a great tool, but are we approaching it correctly? Right,
Yeah.
are we solving the problem correctly that we've identified? And that was really my.
I think they feel under pressure to show the cost, because you're talking to the advisory, so-called finance committee, and the
Right.
select board, and everybody's looking at the cost. So he's sort of justifying it by, well, you throw in a little more money here, but it should get paid for out of, the less overtime. Whether or not, I can't imagine that's his total motivation, because I think his motivation would be to grow the group and keep morale up, because if you're just awash with money, it doesn't seem to, that doesn't really help. I think he didn't like having to call people in on forced overtime,
Right.
because you need a supervisor.
I think one of the problems in the past was we were so short-staffed. Overtime was a constantly recurring theme because they needed warm bodies in various positions. And so we were using a lot of overtime. And, the overtime budget seems like it's going down slightly now that we've got more bodies on the force.
Okay. Anyway, my main motivation was there something that we missed that we needed to
Sorry.
keep on the list? Okay, and the school department, did they owe us anything? I mean, they owe us the real big documents and the real cost, but that's not here yet, so.
So Amber did think they'll have it by the next school committee meeting though, so we should have that soon.
Have what? I'm sorry.
The Hastings, the bid information for Hastings.
I thought it was 3/7.
Yeah, it's March 7th, I think I don't
know when the school.
They may have better numbers on some of the stuff for the
Yeah,
next
rough estimate,
meeting,
yeah.
but I
She
think
had-
then they
she had
have to
said at the school
digest
committee meeting
it.
that they would
Or
have
maybe it was
the-
3/7 when they're gonna be willing to,
Sure.
come up with what they wanna put in the warrant, I guess is.
Oh, you know what would be helpful, and it goes beyond just the bids for Hastings, is to have the history of how all the money's been spent and what's left from what and what's been allocated already. That whole thing is very confusing.
For the Hastings project.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, the history of financial allocations, that was brought up, so that would be something good to get.
Yep.
And she's done that before for us, but you kinda need that almost every year.
Do we just want the history specific to Hastings
Yeah,
or, okay.
because that's been a project where money was voted here, we did this, money was voted there, got rid of the modulars, or did the, it's been a many-year thing. Okay, so that was it for that meeting. So, can we get a motion to approve those minutes?
So we breezed over the area where there's questions about the two properties, like there's the
okay.
acceptance of the properties, and I'm not talking about Zara and the other, the Ed Water, or whatever it is, but the big property down south, south of the
Oh, yeah.
the
Conservation.
pike. The conservation the acquisition, approximately $1 million, and there was a couple of other things. So there weren't questions asked, obviously, so what looked like in the notes is fine. But we're talking about, are there any outstanding questions? So I do have questions, and I guess I'd ask the chair what the best place to funnel those are. Because obviously it shouldn't be in the meeting notes, because I wasn't there.
Yeah, so you're talking about the purchase of that property with the different grant funds?
The property we can't access below
Yeah.
the road that we, So I just had a couple of open questions.
Yeah, so conservation, we can just ask Jen to come back and
Okay.
talk to us.
Has she
I don't
been-
remember who the liaison to that is. I should bring my liaison list. All right, I'm gonna find out who the liaison to conservation is, and they can,
That'd be Tom.
is it Tom? Right.
Conserving a response there, Tom, until you were called out, but.
Yeah.
Do you wanna send Tom specific questions,
That's
or
me.
do you wanna just have a discussion with them, or? what
I
are
don't
you
mind sharing it
interested
with you and with Tom, and we can decide if there's
Okay.
the right forum for that. Tom, you okay with that?
in? That sounds good.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Okay. All right. Somebody make a motion.
Just-
January 25th.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Unrelated to this though, I just had a comment on the overall presentation of the budget from Christie in terms of the debt, like how we are financing the debt. What do we have as our overall outstanding borrowings? I tried to make some sense out of what's there in the budget book, but if you could get some overview of that, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. We can always ask for that. So you're interested in, it's just a little difficult right now because we have an interim finance director, but you're interested in what the remaining debt
Debt
is for
is.
which things. and
Exactly. The maturity.
We're about to do another borrow very
So
shortly, so
I
what would that be?
Did ask about last year's financial statements because they're not published on the website yet, and that should have a roll forward of the debt. So
Yeah,
we
the
might
debts.
wait and see, and I can pull up the debt roll forward and see sort of what information we can parse out of there and decide if
Sure.
we have questions from there.
That would be perfect.
And save our very new finance director from having to answer too
Yeah, I
many
already asked him
questions.
3
and-
questions today because I had library questions too.
So I'll see what I can pull from financial statements and we'll decide how many questions we have from there.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So, somebody make a motion for the January 25th minutes?
Motion,
With Dan, I make a motion to accept the January 25th minutes from the budget summit.
Shafford second?
Okay, any further discussion? If not, roll call vote?
Ahuja, yes.
Beth?
Yeah, Blumberg, yes.
Bradley,
Sorry,
yes.
yeah, meeting.
Yep.
Grant, abstain.
Okay.
Clap yes.
Dolan, yes.
Is that me?
You.
Leslie, yes.
And then Dan,
It's
yes.
getting late.
It's been a long night.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that is 8:01 with Mr. Brandt abstaining. Okay, all right, I have one other important piece of wisdom to impart to you. I was told that the town clerk received from a person 10 citizen petitions today. I talked to Christy and she believes there might be 2 more coming from someone else. And I wanted to float this idea out to you, which she had, which was the warrant closes on the 27th. So sometime after that, like the 29th or the first meeting in March, we have a joint meeting with the select board again and dump those 10 or 12 or however many there are articles at one time and get all the information together and we can share questions that way. And
As long as it's a Monday or a Thursday.
well, one of the choices is a Tuesday, but 2 of the choices she gave me was a Monday or Thursday. I suspect they don't want to use up their select board
Yeah, right.
meeting on that, so they probably would, it
We
would probably
certainly
make
have
more
more
sense to
meetings,
use
so
one of our meetings, and we have 2 a week.
Right.
Yep.
I'm gonna suggest either the Monday or the Thursday.
So may I ask the 10 and the 2 that you're
So-
talking? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jane.
So I just had a question, and again, we haven't read these articles, so.
No.
Well,
Well, so the process is the signatures have to be verified and then they'll be put
Yeah.
on the warrant. So that's when we'll get the.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, okay.
But, the question question is, if we read the warrant questions or warrant articles from the citizen petition and don't feel that we need additional information on it, could we just vote on them without inviting any guests in?
I mean, I suppose you could in theory, but it seems like they're gonna get some time at town meeting, and as much as I could probably guess that I could do that, I would probably think it would be more fair, because we don't know, we don't know what they all are, so maybe there are ones we do have questions. But, we don't have to, like, we didn't invite a guest in for Article 2 hearing the meetings. I mean, I guess you don't have to.
I guess we could decide after we see them.
Yeah,
Or we could, we could wait until we
But-
see them, or we could schedule a joint meeting with the select board and then go through them in order and say, we're ready to vote this one, we have questions on this one, and make that decision. I assume out of 12, there's probably something we should have a question on, and so we could just set aside that time in advance, knowing that that's how we're going to handle it for expediency.
I think it's important.
I-
The process of having citizens petitions is
Yeah.
important. Haven't agreed with a lot of the ones we've gotten lately, but it's an important part of
Right.
democracy, so I think we
We have
should,
to
as a
respect the
board,
process.
at least support it with
As
a hearing.
much as I'm not excited about the idea of 12 new citizens petitions in one meeting, because if you think about it, if each one just takes 15 minutes between hearing the presentation and voting it, we're talking several hours of our meeting time. I think it's good for us to be knowledgeable in advance so that we can have our reason for voting to pass over, or our reason for voting to support,
Yeah, well, I think I would
be well thought out.
I think I would not actually have us vote on these at the joint meeting. I think we would vote
I
at
agree.
our next meeting, because then the select board doesn't have to sit there and listen to us do a roll call vote. And then we can discuss them or whatever at the next one.
But, no, I
It's-
agree with you, but I think we should be more knowledgeable so that when we do place our votes, whether to recommend, to pass over, or whatever, that we're more knowledgeable. And so I think it is worthwhile to have this group of citizens come in and do their presentation.
Look, I think it's better than coming to our little public forum and spouting random facts about it or whatever. And it would be better to have, and certainly provides the proponent an opportunity to practice for their town meeting presentation, I think.
So one of the elements we bring to the conversation with folks in the town, the folks who work at the town, is that conversations with us will sometimes prevent things from going forward because there's too many questions, too much pushback, too much obvious, whatever we're presenting. So if the timing, if I understand the timing, the warrant is closed and then we're having the meeting, is that not too late to be able to sort of say, hey, I'm thinking of some of the citizen petitions we've had. Maybe this is a little too half-baked at this point. Maybe it needs some additional feedback and wait till the next conversation. It seems like we missed.
We don't have the right to oversee.
The
We don't
difference,
have the right to override a citizen's petition.
I'm not talking about overriding a citizen's petition. We're talking about making sure that it's complete. Because if the warrant is already
Doesn't
closed,
matter.
well, it does matter for the purposes of being able to make sure a full and complete article can be brought. People can bring
We
poor
don't have
ones.
that right.
Well, I'm not talking about a right, I'm talking about providing the
Support.
discourse to be able to say, hey, here's something you can focus on, here's additional elements. And I'm thinking about like the recycling one, some of those conversations, there was substantial work done based on our conversations that went into making refinements to the article before it was brought there. This is not about suppressing, changing, moving, pushing, overriding, anything like that. This is providing that forum of conversation so that the right, best baked article can be brought. And I don't know if we've missed that window if we wait till after. I just flip it.
John actually meets with proponents on these if they want to, and helps.
You want me to try to relieve the consternation a little bit?
Just let me finish first. And I think in this particular, in these cases, The actual, if the warrant is close enough, then the actual motion could be adjusted probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. The reason the town manager suggested waiting for it to close is then you know all the citizens petitions, because as Beth said, the select board cannot not put them on the warrant if they got the signatures. So this way, there's 16 of them, or there's 12, or there's 8, or whatever. You're done, so that's an advantage. I do appreciate your thought, but John probably has some good thoughts on this. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I haven't seen what was actually turned into the town clerk, but I've worked with a handful of people over the past month or so trying to provide some advice and suggestions. And I just want people to know, of the citizens petitions that I've seen drafts of so far, they are all essentially requests for non-binding resolutions for the town meeting to essentially have more of what I would consider a sense of the meeting vote. So they're not necessarily, the ones that I've seen are not bylaws for which the town meeting, would enact any new sort of bylaw or any sort of change. The ones I've seen are all non-binding resolutions for which it would really just be a sense of the meeting, where it would be a vote of the voters present at town meeting to essentially state an opinion about some topics that are being brought up. So I think the concern that people have I know there was a lot of work went into trying to make sure that people understood, for instance, the plastic reduction bylaw. The ones I've seen are nothing like that. And I'm thinking through potentially handling non-binding resolutions a little bit differently than normal articles where there's a binding action by town meeting. But I haven't totally finished my research and made up my mind yet. So I just want to let you know that to some extent, it's probably going to come down to voters expressing their opinions about topics in a non-binding way. Unless and this of course is assuming the ones that have been submitted are the ones I've seen.
Thank you, John.
And we're gonna do 10-minute speeches on each one of a dozen.
That's part of what I'm thinking about, because as Beth pointed out, if it takes too much time on each of these, then the meeting could become extraordinarily long and extend over multiple nights or whatever. So I'm thinking through what the options are for potentially handling non-binding resolution articles slightly differently than the 10-minute rule I have in the past. But I will certainly come before you and the select board once I see more about what these are and say what my plans are, and get feedback on that before the meeting.
Sounds good. Okay, so generally people were, I'm just doing a straw poll here, but people were okay with the idea of doing a joint meeting and getting it all at once, and you hear more questions that way. And then, so, all right. So I'll give that feedback to Christy. All right, that's, I think, enough for one night, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
Shafford, motion to adjourn.
Clem, second.
OJ, yes.
Sorry, I'm muting. Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes?
Grant, yes.
Oh, Clap,
Clap.
yes.
Dolan.
Golden, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Once you seconded.
McMahon, yes.
Go.
Shafford, yes. And Beth, I forgot to give you the snow update, but I'll give it to you on Thursday.
And
Thank you.
we'll see you all
I said
Thursday.
nobody.
Thank you, Westborough TV.